Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me here today. If you have found me, there may be a message of hope and healing for your transformation. Today, I would like to talk to you a little bit about domestic abuse and the different variations of it, and some of the signs and symptoms, so you can identify if you are in those situations or where to receive help if you need to. And also share a story about a client of mine. So there is a emotional abuse of somebody who's abusing their power to somebody who's more vulnerable or susceptible. And there's a type B trauma, which results from specific traumatic events such as physical, sexual, or verbal abuse, bullying, assault, a car accident, or near-death experience, or both. So these can be either experienced and or witnessed. So if you were a child experiencing these situations with your family members, your parents, you may take it on and feel energetically these experiences. So in domestic abuse situations, there's usually one person who likes to control another, and there's sometimes physical or sexual violence in the home, the use of intimidation, using emotional abuse to control or isolation, minimizing and or denying the incidents and blaming, the use of children, and sometimes use of privilege, if it's your partner, if they're abusing their power, abusing legal systems and or any system to control you, economic abuse, coercion, and or threats. These are just some of the things that may or may not happen in domestic abuse situations. And if you found yourself in any of these, seek professional help. In domestic abuse situation, it can be very traumatic. If you have psychological trauma such as shock, denial, disbelief, there's confusion, maybe difficult concentrating. Sometimes you feel irritable and have mood swings or anger, anxiety and fear. Maybe you're shut down, not sure where to go and who to contact. You've been told not to contact anybody, and based out of your fear, it's their way of controlling you. There's a lot of guilt, shame, self-blame. You're withdrawing from others. You may feel sad or hopeless, feeling disconnected and or numb. And sometimes the anxiety, shame, or guilt, you might find yourself frequently crying and or feeling over-compliant and powerless. The warning signs are if your abuser is extremely jealous, possessiveness, and or unpredictable. And sometimes the emotional abuse is they're hypercritical and or judgment towards you. They ignore your boundaries, invade your privacy and your space. They're possessive, controlling, manipulating, dismiss your feelings. And in narcissistic situations, you might have a lot of headaches or chronic pain, anxiety, depression, avoidance of the criticizing and or upsetting you and or your partner, vice versa. The isolation is apparent, the drawing from friends, family, loss of interest and low self-esteem, and definitely a lot of stress and sleepless nights. If you're trying to heal from emotional abuse, you might find yourself in a little bit of despair, but education is important, finding connections that can help restore and maintaining your balance. Journaling is important, and finding the right healing tools and or the healing professionals that can guide you back to wholeness. Along the way, you might have experienced gaslighting and a lot of yelling, blame shifting, and outbursts of unpredictable anger. And these are definitely signs of psychological abuse, and your children would be affected as well. Your brains and their little brains might be subjected to fear, anxiety, stress, and it might cause them some cognitive, and maybe at school it's harder to function. There are lots of different kinds of trauma, persuasive violence. Sometimes at an early age you might have experienced that if you are in a relationship with somebody who shows signs of this. Maybe you've experienced that as a child as well, so it's familiar, but it's not something that can be ignored. And a lot of times you might have repressed memory. It does feel in your body energetically. You can have phantom pain in different areas, undetected by doctors or a routine exam or maybe x-rays, but it is definitely there. Chronic pain, disassociation, and these are type of things that are very valid, and you can receive some energetic assistance along with your cognitive, mental, physical, mental, emotional journey of health. So with that said, I'd like to share a little story with you. Years ago, when I worked for a domestic abuse service center, and we had ladies come in to get orders, and I would go to court with them and wait for the judge to sign off on the order and take them back to where their children were, and the order was placed and they would go home. And some of the advocates were worried about this one particular person. Well, all of them actually, if they were down there getting orders, because the sheriff would then serve the order. And this one woman was so worried about going home, and she feared, obviously, very much her partner, significant other, and the children were afraid. So when she got home, I guess he was served, but was very vengeful and took it out on her, and she ended up in the hospital anyway. But that was scary for her, but she survived and was able to recover and regroup in a battered women's shelter for a while with her children. And through Harriet Tubman, which we also were a part of, there's a lot of women support groups that helped her build her resume and donated business suits and clothes for the children, school supplies. So when I was an educator through Aveda, we brought students, or I did, over there to help with their hair and makeup and make them feel better, because they have been through hell. And so the students learned a lot of lessons about all walks of life, that you can't judge somebody just because they are what they are. They still deserve to feel pretty and get back on their feet. And so those students that were with me and brought joy to these other women were humbled, and that never left them. So you never know where people are in their walk of life, but it's always good to share and donate back when you have gifts such as these students did. Some of them were very new to their craft, and giving a sensory journey to somebody's scalp who'd been beaten, and or rubbing their hands with essential oils and Aveda's lotion was so beautiful, and giving manicures, pedicures in their hair and their makeup, and letting them know touch is okay, for they'd been beaten, harassed, abused, raped, and by somebody they were living with, and it was awful. But it was a beautiful experience, and something that those students will never forget, nor will I. And that's something that I think is prominent in your life when you have a journey and you have an experience that touches your heart and leaves an imprint. I also shared some of my skills working with a friend of mine who opened a studio for battered women. Well, it was for anybody really, but I happened to bring a bunch of women over there and they found out about it, and I encouraged them to have their pictures taken, which they didn't want to because this one in particular, she was lit on fire while she was sleeping in her own bed by her estranged partner, and lit on fire. Kids were sleeping next door in the same house, mind you. So she survived the many, many, many surgeries on her body, and it was obvious what had happened. So I convinced her to come into the studio, and we worked on her with pan makeup, theater makeup, and under the lights like Hollywood. And I didn't turn her to the mirror until we were complete with the wardrobe and everything. And we all cried so hard we had to start over with the makeup. It melted away. But next time I didn't show her until after the pictures were complete, and we showed her the proofs, and then we all cried again because she was gorgeous, looked just like a model, and that's what we gave her as a gift for surviving. And she actually ended up modeling. Somebody saw her photos somewhere that maybe she posted somewhere, I guess maybe Facebook is so long ago, and she was able to do some modeling. And when she showed up, they asked her who she was. I said, now do me a favor and I'll help you. Just show up as you. Be as you are. She showed up. She said she was the model that they had hired for this gig. It was a commercial. And they didn't bat an eye. They said, come on in. I was with her. We went in and I watched them make her up, wardrobe after wardrobe. And she was beautiful. And she felt it. It wasn't the makeup or the hair or the wardrobe. She felt beautiful the way she was. When she left, all the makeup was taken away and they let her to keep the clothes. But she still felt beautiful. And that's the story. Sometimes out of trauma and these traumatic experiences, she found her beauty, her inner beauty, and from her childhood trauma. And to tie the story together, that's how she felt her whole life is ugly, because she was told that and she was beat as a child. So can you imagine, through all of this and being burnt almost to pieces, she felt beautiful and she looked beautiful and she had a heart of gold. So you never know people's walk of life. Just because you see somebody on the billboard looking beautiful, you'd never recognize her in the grocery store, ever. But she's beautiful, and that's the end of the story. So you never know. You can't judge a book by its cover, and or anybody, because you definitely haven't walked in her shoes. But a lot of you that have gone through domestic abuse have. So the story's not over until you say so. And so it is. Namaste.